a Taliban outreach that needs correction. The overwhelming narrative to engage with the Taliban must change, which will lead to the budding of policy options. Very few, if any, might have been surprised when the Taliban unleashed violence to take over territories in Afghanistan. What has surprised many is the pace at which the Taliban pushed their lines and replaced the Afghan state. The Doha peace deal with the United States and China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi's warm welcome to a Talibani delegation in Tianjin, in July, reflect the diplomatic successes of the Taliban at the international level. Almost all regional stakeholders at this point are engaging with the Taliban, openly or behind closed doors. The special envoy of the State of Qatar for Counter-Terrorism and Mediation of Conflict Resolution, Mutlaq bin Majed al-Qahtani, in June, confirmed India's outreach to the Taliban. Now that the Afghan state has failed, the Taliban is the most powerful political entity. But the Afghan people are the most important stakeholders and India must resist engaging with the Taliban. Issue of legitimacy. Where is the good Taliban? In the past, leaders and analysts have used the terms Taliban 2.0, or the good Taliban, to create an environment conducive to negotiate with them. The Taliban's unleashing of war to secure power has put an end to those arguments. The claim that the Taliban shall have to reform to secure international legitimacy is exaggerated. The conclusion of an agreement with the US while excluding the Afghan government, and talks with China, have already accorded the required legitimacy to the Taliban, internationally. On the domestic front, if the Taliban cared for legitimacy from the Afghan people, they would have contested elections instead of capturing territory through force. Long-term settlement. Several reports that have emerged over the last couple of months have confirmed that violence and oppression are the Taliban's modus operandi. Women, as expected, have been hit the worst. Female students and employees have been let off. News of the Taliban forcing women to marry its soldiers or else assaulting them has increased. The already dwindling Afghan Sikh community is leaving the country. The progress made during the fragile peace in the last 2 decades has been undone in a matter of weeks. As the struggle for power within the Taliban gains momentum, ethnic divisions will accentuate, and the minorities will become more and more vulnerable. Sadly, the Afghans who are leaving their homes today will not be returning to their homes anytime soon, if at all. Historically, India has been one of the preferred refuges for Afghans beyond their immediate neighborhood. First, nations must see refugees as their responsibility rather than a burden. This shall involve rapid processing of visa applications and ensuring safe routes to commute. Income and quotas. SC lays bare the limits of using economic criterion to determine reservation eligibility. The Supreme Court's ruling that economic criterion alone cannot be used to classify a member of a backward class as belonging to the creamy layer adds an interesting nuance to the jurisprudence of affirmative action. There was a time when backwardness was primarily related to the inadequate social and educational advancement of a group. Ever since the court, in Indra Sahni, 1992, introduced the concept of creamy layer, a term describing the well-off among the backward classes, and declared that this section should be denied reservation benefits. The original idea of including groups based on social backwardness was matched by a parallel exercise to exclude the more advanced among them. This position has crystallized into law. Many support the formulation that once caste is accepted as a basis for determining backwardness, there is nothing wrong in excluding the affluent among the eligible castes. The Union government has unreservedly accepted the creamy layer rule, and formulated criteria for identifying those who fall under the category. The proponents of economic criteria feel that genuine social justice means reservation benefits should be restricted to the poorer among the backward, while sections championing backward class assertion disfavor any dilution of the social basis for reservation. The court's latest judgment in a Haryana case corrects a grave error by the state. It has struck down a notification fixing an annual income of 6 lakh rupees as the sole criterion to identify whether a family belongs to the creamy layer. It was contrary to Indra Sahni that had spoken of different criteria, including being the children of high-ranking constitutional functionaries, employees of a certain rank in the union and state governments, those affluent enough to employ others, or with significant property and agricultural holdings and, of course, an identified annual income. The court has found that the Haryana criterion based on income alone was contrary to its own law that specifies that the creamy layer would be identified through social, economic and other factors. The Constitution permitted special provisions in favor of socially and educationally backward classes through the First Amendment, as well as reservation in government employment for backward classes. Judicial discourse introduced a 50% ceiling and the creamy layer concept as constitutional limitations on reservation benefits. However, the 103rd Constitution Amendment, by which 10% reservation for the economically weaker sections, EWS, has been introduced, has significantly altered the affirmative action program, income and quotas. SC lays bare the limits of using economic criterion to determine reservation eligibility. The Supreme Court's ruling that economic criterion alone cannot be used to classify a member of a backward class as belonging to the creamy layer adds an interesting nuance to the jurisprudence of affirmative action. There was a time when backwardness was primarily related to the inadequate social and educational advancement of a group. Ever since the court, in Indra Sahni, 1992, introduced the concept of creamy layer, a term describing the well-off among the backward classes, and declared that this section should be denied reservation benefits. The original idea of including groups based on social backwardness was matched by a parallel exercise to exclude the more advanced among them. This position has crystallized